Mr. Faith, I'd like to now turn your attention to your second step that you employed, which was investigating the adequacy of the investigation.
Yes.
Did you notice anything in regards to the interview process?
Yes, I actually find the interview process to be one of the strong points of Thomas's investigation. Reagan Thomas interviewed three eyewitnesses, Reagan Thomas spoke with three eyewitnesses as well as two police officials. The police officials were probably the best two police sources. Reagan Thomas's interview of the three witnesses also appears to be sufficient.
And did you notice any major flaws in regards to the interview process?
If there was one major flaw in this investigation, in Thomas's investigative process, it was his absence at the Walton press conference after the incident. However, this is a shortcoming on the part of Thomas and not necessarily BNN.
Why do you say that?
Well, BNN's president, Kate Berkshire, watched the press conference from a separate feed. So this means that someone from BNN was actually watched the press, paid attention to the press conference before making the decision to run a story.
And how do you, as a professional, feel that Reagan Thomas dealt with Jan Patel?
While I do agree that Reagan Thomas should not have dismissed Jan Patel, I also understand that a journalist can discount a source's testimony. This can happen for reasons such as the desire to achieve fame or bias.
So can you please elaborate a little bit more on what other reasons could be absolutely credible reasons for discounting a source?
Basically, if a source is deemed, a journalist has a judgment call, has to make a judgment call, and part of a judgment call involves discounting a source for credibility issues or conflict of interest or bias.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention to the third step, which was analyzing the actual broadcast or publication. May I please have a moment to set up the courtroom for the use of a demonstrative?
Sure.
When they set the courtroom, do you stop the time? I think so.
You gotta love all these vague.
Just objections.
I just think so,
To
but
be on the safe side. It's just two objections.
you gotta love how AMTA fails to write in all these situations.
All right. I don't know how that's going to
Now, Mr. Faith, you said that you had the opportunity to review a paper and DVD copy of this broadcast?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you feel that the use of a demonstrative would aid you in explaining to the jury how you were able to analyze this?
Absolutely.
Permission for the witness to step down in order to reference the demonstrative?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Faith, did you notice anything of significance in regards to the language used in the actual broadcast?
Well, yes, the language used in the broadcast, some of the language used in the broadcast is inflammatory. Reagan Thomas, uses language such as gunned down and all signs point to Drew Walton. So this language isn't in fact inflammatory, but it is more popular in today's journalism.
Did this lead you to conclude that CNN had in fact violated any standard?
Absolutely not. Well, you have to look at the broadcast as a whole. So while Reagan Thomas used inflammatory language, Thomas also used language such as it appears to be, I spoke with several witnesses and police sources, Walton may be the shooter, the possible involvement, uncertainty, so few answers. So this type of language shows that there was some uncertainty in the broadcast. Yes.
So were you able to come to any major conclusion regarding the broadcast itself?
Yes. Basically, one must look at the broadcast as a whole. And looking at the broadcast as a whole, Reagan Thomas did not violate any standards of journalism.
Thank you. Permission for the witness to return to his seat. Now, Mr. Faith, I'd like to direct your attention to the retraction. Are retractions a part of ethical journalism?
Absolutely, and I do applaud BNN for issuing a retraction after a nerve incident.
Does a retraction mean that a journalist made a mistake or that the investigation wasn't thoroughly investigated?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay. The document that she's referring to has not been sworn into evidence, nor has it been properly stipulated to the bench.
The question was about retractions in general, so I don't think that they're referring to a specific retraction here. So I'm going to overrule your objection to answer the question. He's being asked for an opinion about retractions.
So, Mr. Faith, do retractions mean that journalists have made some sort of mistake or that an investigation wasn't thoroughly investigated?
Absolutely not. A retraction basically means that someone other than the journalist made an error. Basically, a source could have given the journalist wrong information or something along those lines. So it's really not on the part of the journalist.
Now, Mr. Faith, finally, I would like to direct your attention to the entire analysis as a whole. Were you able to come to a conclusion in the case?
Absolutely, yes.
And what was that conclusion?
My conclusion basically was that while this investigation, this whole broadcast, was not a model of excellent journalism, it did have some flaws, but looking at it as a whole, it's quite typical of today's journalism. It is not clear whether BNN violated any ethical standards, and I'm certainly not convinced that there was any violation of some sort.
Thank you, Mr. Faith. No further questions at this time.